Chapter 8. The Colonel. "I doubt you can regain your shadow," speaks the colonel as he sips his coffee. Like most persons accustomed to years of giving orders, he speaks with his spine straight and his chin tucked in. It is greatly to his credit that his long career in the military has not made him officious. Rather, it has bestowed an order to his life along with his many decorations. Exceedingly quiet and thoughtful, the colonel is an ideal never for me. He is also a veteran chess player. "As the gatekeeper warned you," the old officer continues, "one of the conditions of the town is that you cannot possess a shadow. Another is that you cannot leave, not as long as the wall surrounds the town." "I did not know I would forfeit my shadow forever," I say. "I thought it would be temporary. No one told me about this." "No one tells you anything in this town," says the colonel. "The town has its own protocol. It has no care for what you know or do not know. Regrettable." "What will become of my shadow?" "Nothing at all. It waits and then it dies. Have you seen it since your arrival?" "No, I tried several times and the gatekeeper turned me away. For security reasons," he said. "Predictable," the colonel said, shaking his head. "The gatekeeper is entrusted with the care of the shadows. He shoulders the entire responsibility. The gatekeeper can be a difficult man, harsh when not called for, blind to his own faults. Your only move is to wait for his mood to change." "Then I will wait," I say. "Yet what does he have to fear from me?" The colonel finishes his coffee, then takes out a handkerchief to wipe his mouth. The white square of cloth, like his uniform, is worn but clean and pressed. "He fears that you and your shadow will become one again." At that, he returns his attention to the chessboard. This chess differs from the game I know in its pieces and their movements. Hence, the old officer always wins. "Abe takes high priest, you realize?" "Go ahead," I say. I move a parapet to cover up the ape's retreat. The colonel nods, then glares again at the board. The tides of fortune have almost swept victory to the old officer's feet. Even so, he does not rush into the fray. As he compounds stratagem upon stratagem, for him the game is not to defeat the opponent, but to challenge his own abilities. "It is not easy to surrender your shadow and simply let it die," he says, deftly maneuvering his knight between the parapet and my king. This leaves my king vulnerable. He will have checkmate in 3 moves. "No, it is not easy," stresses the colonel. "The pain is the same for everyone, though. It is one thing to tear the shadow away from an innocent child who has not gotten attached to it, and quite another to do it to an old fool. I was in my 65th year when they put my shadow to death. By that age, we already had a lifetime together." "How long do shadows live once they have been torn away?" "That depends on the shadow," says the old officer. "Some shadows are fit and some are not. In this town, severed shadows do not live long. The climate is harsh and the winters long. Few shadows live to see the spring." I study the chessboard and concede defeat. "You can gain yourself 5 more," says the colonel. "Worth fighting to the end. In 5 moves your opponent can err. No war is won or lost until the final battle is over." "Then give me a moment," I say. While I reassess my options, the colonel walks over to the window and parts the thick curtains slightly to peer out. "These few weeks will be the hardest for you. It is the same as with the broken bones. Until they set, you cannot do anything. Believe me." "You mean to say I am anxious because my shadow still is not dead?" "I do," the old officer nods. "I, too, remember the feeling. You are caught between all that was and all that must be. You feel lost. Mark my words. As soon as the bones mend, you will forget about the fracture." "You mean to say as soon as my mind vanishes?" The colonel does not answer. "Excuse me for asking so many questions," I say. "I know nothing about this town, how it works, why it needs the wall, why the beasts are herded in and out every day. I do not understand any of it. You are the only one I can ask." "Not even I know all the rules," says the old officer under his breath. "There are things that cannot and should not be explained, but there is no cause for concern. The town is fair in its own way. The things you need to know, one by one, the town will set these before you. Hear me now. This town is perfect, and by perfect, I mean complete. It has everything. If you cannot see that, then it has nothing. A perfect nothing. Remember this well. That is as much as anyone can tell you. The rest you must learn for yourself. Open your eyes. Train your ears. Use your head. If a mind you have, then use it while you can. If the workers' quarter, where the librarian lives, is a place of past brilliance, then the bureaucratic quarter, which spreads to the southwest, is a place of color fading into past light. Here the spectacle of spring has dissolved into summer, only to be eroded by the winter winds. All along the gentle slope known as the Western Hill stand rows of two-story official residences. The buildings, originally three family dwellings with common entrance halls, are painted white. The siding and doors and window frames, every detail is white. None of these official residences have hedges, only narrow flower beds below tiny porches. The flower beds are carefully tended, with paintings of crocus and pansy and marigold in spring, cosmos in autumn. The flowers in bloom make the buildings look all the more tawdry. Strolling the hill, one can imagine its former splendor. Children playing gaily in the streets, piano music in the air, warm supper scents. Memories find through scarcely perceived doors of my being. Only later did this slope become bureaucratic quarter, which, as the name suggests, was an area of government officials. Undistinguished ranks of officialdom lodged in mediocrity. They too have gone, but to where? After the bureaucrats came the retired military. Surrendering their shadows, cast off like molted insect shells, each pursues his own end on the windswept western hill. With little left to protect, they leave a half-dozen old majordomos to a house. The gatekeeper indicated that I was to find my room in one of these official residences. My cohabitants proved to be the colonel, 4 commissioned officers under him, and a sergeant, who cooks the meals and does the chores. The colonel passes judgment on everything, as was his duty in the army. These career soldiers have known numerous battle preparations and maneuvers, revolutions and counter-revolutions, and outright wars. They who had never wanted family are now lonely old men. Rising early each morning, they charge through breakfast before going their own way, as if by tacit order, to their respective tasks. One scrapes peeling paint from the building, other repairs furniture, one takes a wagon down the hill to haul food rations back up. Their morning duties done, they reassemble to spend the rest of the day sitting in the sun, reminiscing about past campaigns. The room assigned to me is on the upper story facing east. The view is largely blocked by hills in the foreground, although I can see the river and the clock tower. The plaster walls of the room are stained, the window sills thick with dust. There is an old bed, a small dining table, and 2 chairs. The windows are hung with mildewed curtains. The floorboards are badly damaged and creak when I walk. In the morning, the colonel appears from the adjacent room. We eat breakfast together, then repair to a dark curtained room for a session of chess. There is no other way to pass the daylight hours. "It must be frustrating. A young man like you should not be shut indoors on such a beautiful day," says the colonel. "I think so too, though I must say I appreciate getting a chess companion. The rest of the men have no interest in games. I suppose I am the only one with any desire to play chess at this late date." "Tell me, why did you give up your shadow?" The old officer examines his fingers, sun-strained against the curtains, before leaving the window to reinstall himself across the table. "I wish I could say. It may have been that I spent so long defending this town, I could not walk away. If I left, my whole life would have been for nothing. Of course, it makes no difference now." "Do you ever regret giving up your shadow?" "I have no regrets," speaks the old officer, shaking his head. "I never do anything regrettable." I crush his ape with my parapet, creating an opening for my king. "Good move," says the colonel. "Parapet guards against penetration and frees up the king. At the same time, it allows my knight greater range." While the old officer contemplates his next move, I boil water for a new pot of coffee.